Hey YouTube, today I'm going to be doing a deck profile on my newly experimental or whatever, my new updated Gear Chronicle deck. This is the Chronofang Tiger deck, so I was able to build him because I pulled one of him, and then it wasn't even really that hard to get the other three, so, and I did pull the Blind Time Dragons, so out of the 4 boxes. So I decided to put together the deck. This is kind of like my take. It's more of like an experimental, for fun sort of deck. It's not really a competitive Gear Chronicle deck, but it's more focusing around Time Leap and the Bind Zone in general. Because I feel like the Bind Zone, I remember back when I used to play Yu-Gi-Oh! In the day when removing from play was a big thing, like Dark Arm Dragon days with Dimension Fusion, Return from a Different Dimension. Those sort of things where removing things from play was a really key integral part of your combo. So I feel like Chronofang, it started with the Time Leap system, but now Chronofang Tiger seems to be taking it to the next level. So I found that kind of interesting, so I decided to put together the deck. Like I said, it's an experimental deck, so there'll be a lot of random tech choices of like 1 and 2s of certain grade 1 and 2 cards. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So of course, since the deck focuses on Chronofang Tiger, I am running 4 Chronofang Tiger. He's pretty good. He's the second GB2, major GB2 of the Gear Chronicle clan. I find him similar to Blaster Dark Diablo, kind of like how Claris Sword was sort of like the main one that they tried to hype, but then the Legend deck sort of overshadowed him, and then Diablo came out. But anyway, Chronofang Tiger, his GB2 skill is just like Blaster Dark Diablo, so with this skill, you do not need to run the Stride Enabler grade 1, which is really nice. Like, you really don't need it at all, and when we get into the generation, like the Stride units, we'll explain why it's not needed. At least with this, if you're following this build. The next grade 3, because I wanted to focus on the Time Leap strategy, I decided to run Reform Calling Gear Eagle. The grade 3, you could run the common one that came out in set 7 with Chronofang, if you want. I haven't tested him. I only tested the deck with Reform Calling so far, and I really like him in here. And on top of that, I'm going to actually showcase different cards that people don't really play much, but in playtesting it in casual play, I have found some hilarious, interesting combos with this build. So I kind of consider this more of like a budget Gear Chronicle deck because next stage in Chronojet is kind of ridiculous right now in terms of the pricing. So this one is kind of a good one if you're trying to get into Gear Chronicle and you don't want to start with just the plain trial deck with Chronofang. You can go this route. I mean, not Chronofang, I meant Chronojet. So this is grade 3s. Moving on to the grade 2s. So here's where it starts to get interesting. So I'm running 4 Clock Fencer Dragon. Most people would be running the guy, I forgot its name. It's basically the gold dragon thing that came in the second trial, like the one that when he attacks you can counterblast 1 to Time Leap something. He's definitely more consistent than this guy. I like this guy does not use counterblast, and because you can potentially cycle him from the drop zone back into the deck, then Time Leap, draw into him and then Time Leap again, sort of like looping time in a weird way. It's kind of interesting. So he can do quite a few combos with other rear guards. And the interesting thing about him compared to the other guy, man, I can't believe I forgot that guy's name. It's, anyway, compared to him, you do a lot of your time leaps with him on the main phase. So, one good card to pair him up with, I found, is Steam Knight Mudar. He's a new grade 2, but he does have a main phase skill from the Bind Zone. You can, Soul Blast 1, and Superior Call him to the rear guard circle, and he gets 2,000. So you could, I mean, he doesn't really work with this guy. He works more with the grade 1 version of this. But it's just, it gives you some other options. Like, I like how this has a Bind Zone Superior Call on main phase. It's interesting. Because it helps you set up your columns. Like, if you only have a grade 1, you can call him out, Superior Call him, and then, like, call the grade 1 behind him, and stuff like that. And on top of that, he does have the Time Leap skill. So he is searchable with Gear Eagle and that sort of thing. Next, because I did say it is a budget deck, I am running Steam Maiden Mariana. She is a good alternate choice for those of you who do not have Upstream Dragon. Upstream Dragon, again, is more consistent. But what I do like about Mariana is she does get her plus 4,000 power when she's called on R in general. So that means from your hand, with GB1, she's plus 4. From the decks, from Time Leap effects, she gets plus 4. So, really easy card to get the effect off later in the game, or throughout most of the game, actually. And she does work relatively well with stand triggers as well. And then for the last grade 2, I am running one Steam Maiden Balulu because the deck focuses a lot on the bind zone. So when she is placed in the bind zone, you can counterballs want to draw cards. So she does give the deck a little bit of that extra draw, sort of like a weird, like having an extra Gigi, but it's not a grade 1. That's the way I look at it. So that's my grade 2 lineup. It's really unique, but it's actually quite fun. It does work. So I encourage you guys to test it out if you guys play Gear Chronicle. It's pretty fun. You can discover some nice hidden combos. Next for grade 1s, 2 Steam Scalar Emilana, I think. Emilana, I think is her name. Basically, this is the new Quintet wall for Gear Chronicle that has an effect, an additional effect of when this card is put in the drop zone from the Guardian Circle. You can choose one other card from the drop zone, bind it face up, then you get to choose up to 2 cards from your drop zone, return to the deck, and shuffle the deck. So it prevents deck out because Quintet walls, main reason why I feel like no one was playing them was because they didn't want to deck out. And the game has moved a lot faster now. It has a faster tempo in terms of how fast the matches play out, and the numbers are a lot bigger now, so that does hurt Quintet walls' effectiveness. So I do like that they did give her that additional effect. But I'm only running 2. I've seen a couple of builds where people are running 4 of this. I just really don't feel comfortable relying on just Quintet walls. So I still do run 2 Perfect Guards, 2 regular Perfect Guards. Nice thing about combining regular Perfect Guards with Quintet walls is you can actually chain the Perfect Guard off of a Quintet wall. And then proceed to recycle this stuff later. Because of this thing's effect, which I do like. So I think 2 and 2 is fine. I may go 1 and 3. If I was going to play the deck at a more competitive level, I probably would go 1 Quintet wall and 3 of this Perfect Guard. This Perfect Guard is also just a generic one, so it can guard the cross. It can guard rear guards like Die Kaiser and stuff like that. It can protect your... you can defend against Laurel and stuff like that better. Sinbuster and stuff like that. So, those are the 4 Sentinel cards. And then I am running 2 Steam Maiden Danish. She is just really good at disrupting the opponent's field. If you time leap away their starter, then they get nothing from it. So 2 of this. And then 2 Time Break Dragon. This has Time Leap, so it's searchable with the Gear Eagle. This is the grade 1 equivalent of the Clock Fencer Dragon, so just give him more a rear guard time leap ability. And then I am running 2 8K Vanilla. The reason why I run 2 8K Vanilla is because it is a budget deck, so Mariana plus this is an easy 21K. And on top of that, if you do have to use Balulu to fight, then this is still 16K, so you're still able to hit proper numbers. That's really the only reason why I'm running these 2 in here. And if you do have to ride them early game, 8K defending early is still, with a 10K shield, is still really good. It always will be. So it allows you to maintain that early advantage, and because we now have the ability to recycle cards back into the deck, it's kind of a no issue. Next, 2 Steam Fighter Nanea. Nanea is pretty cool. This is basically like when any fighter's card is put in the bind zone, this unit gets plus 4K. So he's surprisingly good when you do a whole lot of like time leaping combos. So you can power him up quite a bit in the main phase with your Clock Fencer and that type of stuff. So only 2 of him because I don't like that he's a 6K. That's the only downside of him. And then I am running for my 1-ofs. I'm running 1 Mellum. People are probably going to say that you need to run more Mellum, like 3. This should all be Mellum. I kind of know that, but I didn't want to take... I only have a playset of 4, and the other 3 are in my more competitive, my Chronojet Dragon deck. So I just teched her in here rather than have her sit in the binder, so she can put herself to use and allow me to utilize the stand trigger in this deck. And then, of course, one Gigi. These 2 are kind of tech cards, one-ofs. If you get to use the melon plays, it's fine. If not, the deck still has enough potent abilities with the other rear guards to be able to do stuff on its own. And then for the trigger lineup, I am running a total of 4 stands. So I am running 2 Steam Battlers, because this is the one that's really good with the melon play. A lot of people already know that. The deck being able to bind stuff. This guy getting the bind zone. He does a bunch of draw cards and stuff like that. And then Gear Cat is in here just to prove that it's a stand trigger that's kind of forgotten. It's Gear Chronicles' first stand that they had with an effect back from GBO2. And the nice thing about it is that it does, like, basically when your opponent's rear guard is put into the deck due to effect. So basically when you're using either Danish plays or your stride skill to send something, or even if you're, using your stride unit's ability, you can choose one of your other units and you give it 10,000 power. So this with Mariana plus the 8k behind her makes 31k column. That's pretty nice. And in addition to that, I highly recommend running the stand triggers over draw triggers if you do want to run the Quintet Wall, because Quintet Wall with all 10k grade 0s is very nice. It just helps Quintet Wall keep up a lot better. I mean, I've said this in several of my other deck profiles where I feature Quintet Walls. I strongly believe running either 12 crit with them or 4 stand and 8 crit. So then, as you can guess, the other triggers are just the standard lineup, the 8 criticals, and then the 4 heals. And then the starter is TikTok Worker. TikTok Worker is really good because he has Time Leap, and you can potentially throw him back into the deck and utilize this effect again. I have seen quite a few builds more in like Asia, in the Japanese meta especially, where I see people running 2 TikTok Workers. And that can work in here. I mean, I am running Quintet Wall. If I was running 3 Quintet Wall or 4 Quintet Wall going very YOLO, then I probably would run another one of this, because it does potentially give you an extra 10k shield and more combo potential. But I just didn't want to run it, so I just didn't. For the Stride deck, 2 Bind Time Dragon. I only have 2. Like I said, it's a budget deck. I pulled both of them, so I didn't have to go and obtain another 2 of them. I didn't bother to do that. Being able to do the bind time play is really nice. But I just combine it with other stuff that I already had. Some of those things being Ragnarok Dragon. He's still an annoying thing with critical pressure. Forces out a perfect guard every time that I've strode him. And then Chronos Command Dragon with the Chronos Command Revolution. Because you're running Gear Eagle, so you obviously want to run this in some form or fashion. And then I am running 1 Fate Rider. He's really good in the late game, kind of like a Blizza for them. And then a Float Gear Hippogriff. This is the new rare stride unit that came out in set 7. It has Time Leap. Basically, it's kind of like those resist units that they got in set 5. When your drive check reveals a grade 3, he gets plus 5,000. And then you get to Time Leap one of your rear guards. So, pretty nice. It's kind of good at 1, I would say. And then, of course, the Fiery March Colossus. Just another really good Silent Tom potential type of stride unit. And then I am running 1 Shockwave Colossus. Shockwave Colossus, people are probably saying he's not necessary. Well, I'm not running... If you remember... I am not running any of the grade 1 stride enablers. So if I stride Chronofang Tiger, if I look at my hand and I don't have another grade 3, I can choose to stride this as my first stride to ensure that I'll get grade 3, because then he will flip up my Chronos command, essentially making him fill the void of not being able to use Metallica Phoenix, because I'm not running Chronofang or Chronojet. So this is basically the Metallica Phoenix for Chronofang in this deck. So that's basically why it's in here, so you don't have to run the grade 1 enablers. And then 1 Epoch Maker, just because I had a random filler spot. If you don't want to run him, I recommend running another Fiery March Colossus, or maybe even another one of these. Either one of these is fine, or the promo. I don't have that promo Gear Chronicle unit, but if I did, I probably would run that. But he's just in here. I mean, I usually never stride him, but if I do, it's very late game, and I would have already used Fate Rider at that point, try to push for game, so whatever. And then 2, Rafana, she's really nice. She's the new G-Guardian they got. And then, of course, the 2 Uller. So that is basically my Chronofang with Bind Time Dragon deck. Let me know in the comments what you guys think of this budget build for Gear Chronicle. It's sort of budget, I would say, I guess. It depends on how easy you guys can obtain, like Ragnarok and some of the older cards. But anyway, guys, as always, stay tuned for more Cardfight Vanguard videos in the future, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks.